The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital hummed their familiar tune as Emily Richardson prepared for another night shift. At 24, she was one of the youngest nurses in the intensive care unit, but her gentle touch and unwavering dedication had earned her the respect of even the most seasoned staff members. Tonight, like every night for the past 6 months, she would be caring for the hospital's most unusual patient, Alexander Cromwell, a 62-year-old millionaire who had been in a coma since a devastating car accident. Emily pushed open the door to room 412, her arms laden with fresh linens and bathing supplies. The room was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft whoosh of the ventilator. Alexander lay motionless in the hospital bed, his once powerful frame now frail beneath the crisp white sheets. According to the charts, he had been a real estate mogul, a self-made man who had built an empire from nothing. Now, he was utterly dependent on the care of others. Most of the other nurses dreaded bathing coma patients. It was physically demanding work, requiring them to turn and position dead weight while maintaining the patient's dignity. But Emily approached the task differently. She believed that even though Alexander couldn't respond, he might still be able to hear, to feel, to sense the world around him. So she talked to him. "Good evening, Mr. Cromwell," she said softly, adjusting the privacy curtain. "It's Emily again. How are we doing today?" She checked his vital signs, noting them on her chart. "Your numbers look good. Your daughter Victoria came by this afternoon. She read to you for about an hour. I think she's reading you one of those spy novels you supposedly loved." As Emily filled a basin with warm water and gathered washcloths, she continued her one-sided conversation. She told him about the weather outside, about the terrible coffee in the break room, about the stray cat that had been hanging around the hospital entrance. Some of the other nurses thought she was crazy, wasting words on someone who would never respond. But Emily had read studies suggesting that coma patients could sometimes hear and process information, even if they couldn't show it. She began the careful process of bathing him, starting with his face and neck. Her movements were gentle but efficient, treating him with the same respect she would afford any conscious patient. "The water's nice and warm today," she murmured. "Not too hot, not too cold. Just right, like Goldilocks would say." Emily had learned everything there was to know about Alexander Cromwell over the past 6 months. Not just from his chart, but from the visitors who came and went. His daughter Victoria came almost every day, her eyes perpetually red from crying. His business partner, Robert, stopped by weekly, often bringing reports and documents, as if Alexander might suddenly sit up and start giving orders. There were others too, old friends, distant relatives, a few people who seemed more interested in his money than his well-being. What struck Emily most was the loneliness of it all. Despite his wealth and success, Alexander seemed to have built walls around himself. Victoria had once mentioned, tearfully, that her father had been so focused on building his business empire that he'd forgotten to build relationships. He'd been divorced 3 times, estranged from most of his family, and had few true friends. "You know what I think, Mr. Cromwell?" Emily said as she carefully washed his arms, checking his skin for any signs of breakdown. "I think you worked so hard because you were afraid. Afraid of being poor again, maybe. Afraid of depending on anyone. But look at you now. You're depending on all of us, and that's okay. We've got you." She continued her work methodically, turning him gently to wash his back, always mindful of the tubes and wires that tethered him to life. As she worked, she told him about her own life, about how she'd wanted to be a nurse since she was 8 years old, when a kind nurse had held her hand while she got stitches, about her student loans, her tiny apartment, her dreams of maybe going back to school to become a nurse practitioner someday. "My mom thinks I'm crazy for choosing this career," Emily admitted, wringing out a washcloth. "She says I should have gone into business or law, something that pays better. But this work matters, you know? Taking care of people when they can't take care of themselves. There's nothing more important than that." The months had passed in this routine. Emily worked her shifts, cared for Alexander and her other patients, and went home to her small life. She never expected anything to change. The doctors had been clear. After 6 months in a coma, the chances of meaningful recovery were slim to none. They'd been talking with Victoria about long-term care facilities, about the difficult decisions that might need to be made. But Emily refused to give up hope. Every night she bathed him with care, talked to him like he was an old friend, treated him with dignity and compassion. She moisturized his skin to prevent breakdown, exercised his limbs to maintain muscle tone, and always told him that she believed he could hear her. Tonight, as she was washing his right hand, carefully cleaning between each finger, she thought she felt something. A twitch, maybe. So slight she might have imagined it. She paused, her heart suddenly racing. "Mr. Cromwell," she whispered, "can you hear me? If you can hear me, try to squeeze my hand." Nothing. Just the steady beep of the monitors. Emily sighed, feeling foolish. She must have imagined it. She resumed her work, gently washing his hand. And then it happened again. Definite this time. His fingers moved, curling ever so slightly around hers. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Mr. Cromwell, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." The squeeze was weak but unmistakable. And then, incredibly, miraculously, Alexander Cromwell's eyes began to flutter open. After 6 long months in darkness, he was waking up. Emily immediately hit the call button for the doctor while keeping hold of Alexander's hand. "It's okay," she said softly, her voice shaking with emotion. "You're in the hospital. You're safe. You've been in a coma, but you're waking up now. Just take it easy." Alexander's eyes, cloudy with confusion, found hers. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He couldn't speak yet, the ventilator tube was still in place. But his eyes were asking 1,000 questions. Within minutes, the room was filled with doctors and nurses, all moving with urgent precision. Emily stepped back to give them room to work. But Alexander's eyes never left hers. Even as they removed the breathing tube, even as they shone lights in his eyes and checked his reflexes, he kept looking for her in the crowd. "Remarkable," Dr. Patterson was saying. "Absolutely remarkable. 6 months, and he just wakes up. I've never seen anything like it." When things calmed down and Alexander could finally speak, his voice was barely a raspy whisper. But his first words, directed at Emily, would change both their lives forever. "Thank you," he breathed. "I heard you. Every word, every day, you kept me alive." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she squeezed his hand gently. "Welcome back, Mr. Cromwell." In the days that followed, Alexander would make a recovery that doctors called miraculous, and he would tell anyone who would listen that it was a young nurse named Emily who had brought him back from the darkness, not with medicine or technology, but with simple human kindness and the unshakable belief that he was still there, still worth caring for, still worth saving. The next few days were a whirlwind of medical tests, specialists, and cautious optimism. Alexander's recovery defied every medical prediction. Dr. Patterson and his team ran countless neurological assessments, each one revealing that Alexander's cognitive functions were remarkably intact. He could remember details from before the accident, could solve basic math problems, and showed no signs of the severe brain damage they'd expected after such a prolonged coma. Emily continued her regular shift rotations, but she found herself drawn to room 412 whenever she had a spare moment. Alexander had requested that she be assigned as his primary nurse, and the hospital administration had readily agreed. After all, there was something inexplicable about their connection, something that seemed to be accelerating his recovery. "You talked about a stray cat," Alexander said one afternoon, his voice growing stronger each day. He was sitting up now, propped against pillows, looking more like the powerful businessman he'd once been. "The orange one that hung around the entrance. Is it still there?" Emily smiled, pulling up a chair beside his bed. "You really did hear everything, didn't you?" "Every single word." His eyes grew distant. It was like being trapped in a dark room, pounding on the walls, screaming, but no one could hear me. Except you. Your voice was like a lifeline. When you talked to me, the darkness wasn't so suffocating. Emily felt a lump form in her throat. I just did what any good nurse would do. No, Alexander said firmly. The others, they did their jobs efficiently. I could sense the difference. They moved me, cleaned me, checked machines. But you treated me like a person. Like I mattered beyond just being a body in a bed. Over the following week, as Alexander grew stronger, Emily learned more about the man behind the millionaire facade. He told her about growing up poor in rural Kentucky, about his mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, about his father who'd abandoned them when Alexander was just 7 years old. I swore I'd never be poor again, Alexander confessed during one of their long conversations. I built my company from nothing, worked 18-hour days for years. But somewhere along the way I forgot why I was doing it. The money became the goal instead of the means to a better life. Your daughter loves you very much, Emily said gently. Victoria had been overjoyed at her father's recovery, spending hours at his bedside, making up for lost time. Alexander's expression turned sorrowful. Victoria. God, I've been such a terrible father. She's 32 years old and I barely know her. I missed her high school graduation because of a business deal in Tokyo. I missed her college graduation because of a merger in London. I've missed everything that mattered. It's not too late, Emily said softly. You have a second chance now. Not everyone gets that. As the days turned into weeks, Alexander's physical therapy sessions became more intensive. He worked with a determination that impressed everyone on the medical team. Emily was often there during his sessions, encouraging him when the exercises became painful, celebrating each small victory. One evening, as Emily was finishing her shift, Alexander called her back into his room. He looked nervous, unusual for a man who'd built a business empire through sheer confidence and willpower. Emily, I need to tell you something, he began, fidgeting with the edge of his blanket. When I was in that coma, I had a lot of time to think. Well, not think exactly, but to feel, to understand. And I realized that I'd spent 62 years of my life chasing the wrong things. Emily sat down, sensing this was important. What do you mean? I chased money, power, success. I thought those things would make me happy, would prove I was worthy. But lying in that bed, unable to move or speak, the only thing that mattered was human connection. Your kindness, Victoria's tears, the warmth of your hand holding mine. That's what's real, Emily. That's what matters. I think a lot of people come to that realization, Emily said thoughtfully. Sometimes it takes a crisis to help us see clearly. Alexander leaned forward intently. I want to change things, really change them. I've already called my lawyers. I'm restructuring my entire company. I'm setting up a foundation to provide health care for people who can't afford it. I'm funding nursing scholarships. And I'm stepping back from the day-to-day operations to focus on what really matters, people. Emily's eyes widened. Alexander, that's incredible. But are you sure that's your life's work? My life's work? Alexander laughed bitterly. My life's work was building walls around myself and calling it success. You showed me what real work looks like. You take care of people who can't take care of themselves, not for money or prestige, but because you genuinely care. That's success, Emily. That's what I want to spend the rest of my life doing. The transformation in Alexander was remarkable. His business partner, Robert, was shocked when Alexander announced his plans to donate 75% of his wealth to charitable causes. Victoria was moved to tears when her father apologized for his years of absence and asked if they could start fresh, build the relationship they should have had all along. But perhaps the most unexpected development came 3 weeks after Alexander woke up. Emily arrived for her evening shift, to find him dressed in regular clothes for the first time, standing by the window with the help of a walker. They're releasing me tomorrow, he announced, turning to face her with a smile. Clean bill of health, relatively speaking. A miracle, they're calling it. Emily felt a strange mix of joy and sadness. That's wonderful news. You've worked so hard for this. Emily, Alexander said, his voice serious now. He made his way slowly to where she stood. I know this might sound crazy. I know we come from completely different worlds. But these past weeks, talking with you, learning from you, I've come to realize something. Emily's heart began to race, though she wasn't sure why. You saved my life, Alexander continued. Not just physically, but spiritually. You showed me what it means to truly care about another person, to give without expecting anything in return, and the first to have fallen in love with you, Emily. Not the infatuation of a patient for his nurse, but real love. The kind I didn't think existed outside of movies. Emily stood frozen, her mind reeling. This was impossible, inappropriate even. He was her patient. He was a millionaire. She was just a young nurse with student loans and a studio apartment. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something she'd never seen before. Genuine vulnerability, honest emotion, and a hope that was both terrifying and beautiful.